Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing Who Was Better. The topic for this Who Was Better, two mainstays of ECW, two former ECW World Heavyweight Champions, the human suplex machine Taz, and the franchise Shane Douglas. These are two guys that kind of had similar careers in ECW and had marginal success other places. Taz felt like he was held down in WWE. Shane to an extent as well when he was Dean Douglas. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the two. We got 8 different categories here. Each category we grade on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. At the end, we'll total up the points that they got. Whoever has the most points wins. With that, there is a chance for 5 bonus points. We'll talk about that when we get there. With that being said, let's jump right in. The first category, technical wrestling. Now for Taz, I'm giving him a 5. And there's a reason why Taz was called the human suplex machine. He had 100 different variations of suplexes, whether it be the T-bone Tazplex, the head and arm Tazplex, the belly-to-belly Tazplex, the German Tazplex, any kind of suplex you could think of, Taz did. And he did judo throws in there. He was a very talented technical wrestler. I think it kind of gets overlooked a bit because you don't think of technical wrestling when you think of ECW. You think of more of the blood and violence, which he had some of that as well. But for me, I think he's one of the top tier ones of his time. That's why he gets a 5. Now for Shane Douglas, Shane is going to get a 4. The reason why I give Shane just a notch down is a couple things. There are times in Shane's matches where his offense looked a little bit weak, in my opinion. And I'm a Shane Douglas fan, don't get me wrong. I'm fans of both of these guys. This is just an honest criticism. His belly-to-belly suplex, which he used for a lot of wins, at times looked a little weak, looked a little bit suspect. There's other things he did that weren't as crisp as Taz. Where Taz, every suplex looked like it might break your neck. Shane kind of looked like he was being safe. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It just didn't come over as forceful and as impactful, in my opinion. Now going from that, we're going to go into striking. For striking, both guys get a 4. I will say this about Taz. His clotheslines were great, his kicks were great, his punches not so much. And Shane is very similar. Shane, it's a lot like what I said with the technical wrestling. You can watch 4 Shane Douglas matches and 2 of them, his strikes look amazing, and the other 2, you could see where he missed a guy by a foot. I think these guys are really good at this, and it's one of the things that help propel them. I just don't put them in that top tier. Now going from that, how they perform as a heel. Both of these wrestlers are getting a 5. Taz's run as a heel in ECW is one of the best heel runs, even if it's short, that ever was produced in ECW. He was so good as the guy that was a prick, a miserable SOB as he would say himself. Pair him with Bill Alfonso and Team Taz, he was just great at that. And that's what really broke him off from the Tazmaniac character, was that run there. I thought he was a fantastic heel. I think he's one of the overlooked heels in the history of ECW. He was great at it. Same thing for Shane. Shane, when you talk about ECW heels, Shane is always one of the ones that are talked up at the top of the list, whether it be him or Raven. Usually they're put 1 and 2. And I really can't argue with that placement. I would put Just Incredible, Taz, and Steve Corino to round out the top 5. Add the Dudley Boys if we're considering tag teams. But I think these guys both excelled as a heel. I think they were great in the role. That's why they both get a 5. Now going from that, how they perform as a babyface. For Taz is getting a 5. When Taz turned and became a babyface, he didn't change his style. It was much like Steve Austin. You just got behind the guy who was basically being a heel, but now you're cheering him as a babyface because he's being a heel to the other heels. Again, I think Taz absolutely killed it here. That's why he gets a 5. Now for Shane, Shane's getting a 3. And here's the reason. I don't think Shane was a bad babyface. I just don't think Shane Douglas, the character, works as a babyface. And if you think back, look at the Dynamic Dudes, he was okay there. His tag team with Steamboat was good. But whenever he was a babyface, it just wasn't as impactful as him being a heel. Like I said, for that, I think he's a more natural heel. The character's more naturally a heel. That's why he gets a 3. Now going from that, promos. I'm giving both these guys a 4. Now you may say, George, Shane Douglas is one of the best talkers in ECW. And if you would have asked me this 25, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, I'd agree. However, when I look back analytically and you look at the two, I think they're on the same level. Taz has a lot more fire, has a lot more rage. His promos stand the test of time. Shane leaned a lot on shock value. Calling out Ric Flair, cursing, saying this is a shoot, this isn't Shane Douglas, this is Troy Martin. He leaned a lot into that shock. And while it was great at the time, it's not as timeless. So for me, for my opinion, I think they're right about even. I think Shane might have some of the more memorable promos in ECW history, but Taz is more consistent. Now next up, we're going for presentation. This is your gear, your music, all that fun stuff. For Taz is getting a 3. And here's the reason. First off, I hated the Tasmaniac look. I thought it was silly, hokey, stupid. I never wanted to cheer for the Tasmaniac. As good as he was as a wrestler, it was just dumb to me. His look as Taz, I mean, let's face it, he wore a black singlet with a towel over his head. It's nothing different than, let's say, any of your 30 other wrestlers at the time that had singlets, or 5 other wrestlers that came from shoot environments that would have a towel around their head or neck, like Minoru Suzuki, or Dan Severn, or, dozens of others. So for me, his presentation was always just a bit below. Now, his music, whether it be the instrumental War Machine or his WWE run music, they were good. I would never put either of them as a top 5 in his promotion, though, or even a top 10. And I like War Machine. I like Kiss. I just think, it kind of fit him, but the whole thing, it didn't feel as special as he felt. Now, for Shane is getting a 4. Shane had a look that was all Shane. The yellow and black, the tassels on his boots, and yes, I know people have done tassels on their boots forever. The different jackets he had, the ring robes, everything about it was just Shane. If you put Taz's gear on other wrestlers, and you took away anything that said Taz, let's say you put it on a Rick Steiner, it wouldn't look out of place. You put it on other guys that wore singlets, it wouldn't look out of place. You put Shane Douglas's gear on other wrestlers, and it looks like other wrestlers cosplaying as Shane Douglas. That's where I think the difference is. Now, I don't think he quite got to the point, and it may just be because of ECW and budget constraints, where he basically had a one-of-one look. There are some people that kind of had elements of the Shane Douglas look. He took a lot from Tully Blanchard, in my opinion. But because of that, I do think his presentation is a little bit better. That's why he gets a 4 and Taz gets a 3. Now, going from that, our next category, charisma. Both these guys are getting a 4. A lot of it is they get a little bit of a knock for their early career. Shane, as a white meat babyface dynamic dude in either WCW or early runs in WWF, it just didn't click. Even Dean Douglas didn't click. Well, I can understand why Dean Douglas didn't click, but you get what I'm saying. Taz the same way. Taz is the Tasmaniac. I just mentioned how it never clicked for me, so that hurts. Now, when they became their fully fleshed out versions, the franchise Shane Douglas and the human suplex machine Taz, then they were top notch. They were up on the high levels. But for me, there's so much of their careers where they just didn't work and it just didn't work out. It kind of takes away from them getting to a 5. So for that, they both get a 4. Now, last but not least, big game performance. How they wrestle in the biggest spot of the night, in the main events. These guys had a few main events against each other. I was there at the Guilty as Charged where Taz beat Shane Douglas for the world title, and it's still one of my favorite matches that I've seen live. I would put it right up there with the End of an Era match, the Undertaker and Triple H, and the Double or Nothing match between Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes. It's probably my 3 favorite matches that I've seen live in person where I was actually in the audience. These guys both get a 5 for big game performance, in my opinion. When you put them in the biggest spots, they deliver. Whether it be Shane versus Bigelow, whether it be Shane versus Taz, Shane versus the Pitbulls, Shane versus Tommy Dreamer, anybody you put him in the ring with, he had awesome matches. Same with Taz. Taz versus Shane, Taz versus Sabu, Taz versus Tajiri. There's a highly underrated heavyweight championship match, and I'm trying to remember, but I can't think of it from the top of my head. But Taz defends the world title against Tajiri in ECW, and it is a fantastic, fantastic match. I don't remember what pay-per-view it was, and maybe I'll go ahead and put it down here when I do the editing, but I highly recommend you checking that match out. It's one of those under-the-radar matches that ends up being really great. Like I said, in my opinion, When they were at the biggest stages, they did their best performances. That's why they both get a 5. Now let's total everything up. For Taz, Taz is getting a 35. For Shane Douglas, Shane gets a 32. Now wait, we do have one more thing. There is that bonus I spoke about earlier, and the way you get a bonus is every Wednesday I put on my posts page here on YouTube a simple survey asking you guys who do you think is better. The winner of the survey gets 5 bonus points. That way it could swing this either way. With that being said, our winner getting the 5 bonus points, Taz, bumping him up to 40, and Shane Douglas to 33, giving us the ultimate winner, Taz. It's kind of funny, and I want you guys to go check out this post if you haven't. If you look at the comments are so firmly on Shane's side. However, the vote itself was so firmly on Taz's side. So I don't know if maybe the Taz fans just didn't feel they needed to comment, or maybe the Shane fans would vote and then see that he's not winning, so they decided they'd put comments in maybe to sway it. I'm a fan of both guys, don't get me wrong. I think either one of them could have won this. But I do think that's interesting. Like I said, go check that out. I think it's kind of funny. But with all that being said, our ultimate winner, the human suplex machine, Taz. Make sure you pay attention this Wednesday. We're going to put up another poll for next week's video. That way you can vote and you can have your voice heard. So with all that being said and done, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Who Was Better.